Well, hello. Welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast. I am Paul Zeidman, a screenwriter, and I'm quite happy to have as my guest today. I've known this fellow for quite a long time. I've done a couple of interviews with him on my blog. I've also taken part of some of his workshops, and very happy to have on the podcast today WGA screenwriter and life coach for screenwriters, Brooks Elms. Brooks, welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast.
Thank you. I feel welcome and excited to be here.
Great, great. So this is going to be somewhat of a different approach to the podcast because we're going to kind of like seeing Brooks' coaching skills in action. But before we get to that, for regular listeners and viewers of the podcast, we like to start things off talking about maybe something we've seen or read, or, whether we liked it or we hated it, or we were indifferent, however, what have you. I will go first just to give you a couple of seconds to collect your thoughts. What was it I watched on Netflix last week? Oh, wait, it's on the tip of my tongue. I finally got to see Furiosa in the theater, and I liked it. I didn't love it. I love Fury Road, but I liked Furiosa. To me, it just kind of seemed like, hey, this one movie was really popular and did successful. Had a huge box office, got a ton of Oscars. Let's try it again, but now let's just do a prequel to it. And I guess to me, that just shouts out cash grab. And I mean, it was fun. I mean, the action sequences were great, and I thought Anya Taylor-Joy was fantastic in the title role. But to me, it just didn't seem necessary. But I can understand why they made it, and I love George Miller as a director. But I'm glad. But I will say, I am glad I saw it on the big screen because I think that watching it at home, even how big your TV is, would not do the same justice, especially the big screen and the surround sound. So if you get to see it in the theaters and you like Fury Road, you'll probably like this one as well.
Nice. It's funny. I would imagine George Miller was not doing a cash grab, but like, I don't think he saw it from that way. But look, if you felt it was forced, that's a completely legitimate and take on it. I haven't seen it. I was stunned at Fury Road. It was just like what? I mean, it had the verve of like a brand new 19-year-old tour de force filmmaker, and the guy was in the late 70s, I think, when he made that.
Yeah.
So anyways, really cool. So I will speak to two Godzilla movies. Godzilla X King Kong, which I saw, and then Godzilla Minus One, and I saw them, I don't know, a weekend apart. My sons are really into those movies. I was really into Godzilla as a kid and had fairly mixed views about most of the stuff they've done more recently. This one I felt like like Godzilla X King Kong, it just lost me. I was the effects are kind of fun, but even that, it was just, to me, it was, yeah, it was funny because I remember as a kid going, yeah, talking. I want more monsters fighting.
Right, of course. Well, that's Godzilla and Kong. That's what you want.
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted as a kid. Now, not that I needed to be deep or anything, but like it just felt, I don't know, there wasn't much there for me. Godzilla Minus One, I thought definitely was more there for me. I wasn't a huge fan of the exact sort of drama and characters, but like that's definitely more my vibe, and I liked it. And I was watching it. I was a little distracted about something else, but in general, that I love a lot of the things they were striving for in that one, and that was pretty cool. So it was fun to kind of see them back to back.
Oh yeah, I agree. To me, Godzilla Minus One was one of, if not like the best movie of last year, just because I've talked about this with a couple of screenwriting groups that it's not really about Godzilla. It's about the people of Japan and how they're trying to recover from the war. And Godzilla is just this force of nature who just happens to be a giant radioactive dinosaur. It's almost like Godzilla's Jaws almost. And so it's how the people react to all of this going on. And it just happens to have fantastic special effects too.
Yeah, and I would say the last thing I'd say about it too is that aesthetic coming from like a real story about these people that had some real heft to it. It's somehow in that, and they're obviously a little more budget sensitive. The shot selection for the action sequences had a really interesting feel to them. They just felt a little more realistic or human or whatever. So whereas the Godzilla versus Godzilla X King Kong, it's just like swirling. It's like a video game. It's like that. Whereas this had the point of view of the shot selection felt more grounded. And to me, that's more exciting.
Yeah, well, it wasn't just a guy in a rubber suit, tromping through a set of miniature buildings with sparklers going off to indicate explosions, that sort of thing.
That's right. That's
Okay,
right.
well, fantastic. So Brooks, before we get to the meat of today's show, just give everybody a little bit of background about yourself for those who might be unfamiliar with you.
So I started making movies with my buddies in high school. We made parodies, a karate movie. We made a parody of Red Dawn. We made a western and a detective movie. We'd made a ton up to like made an hour long film my junior year of high school. Showed it in the auditorium. 100 people showed up. It's great. Even the mayor of the town. Um, so that was my background. I'd made basically 50 short film experiments before even going to NYU in the 90s. Um, and then I took a turn towards, because I went into NYU going, how come I'm the only one here that likes Jean-Claude Van Damme's Bloodsport? Like, what's like, how come, like, what? So I was kind of eaten alive in a way of all the, the film literate people around me, and I was like, oh yeah, there's a whole other dimension to this. So that's where really my film literacy went deep, and then I started making really personal films, and I won a screenplay award for this personal film I made my senior thesis film. So then I made a feature, wrote, directed, and produced a feature right out of NYU when I was 22. A scene from that movie was later viewed on YouTube 1.1 million times. So I was good with authenticity. I was good with character. I was good in short bits, but almost nobody saw the feature because I wasn't quite good enough with story structure. But it took me a long time to figure that out. I did make another independent feature film in my 30s. And then I finally figured out the big turning point in my career, which was how do I take that authenticity and character development that I really love and lean into something that Hollywood will actually notice. And a producer was really encouraging me to write a genre movie for him. And I was like, oh, I don't do genre. And I was like, well, hold on a second. Maybe there's a way for me to do what I do within genre. And that's what really broke me in Hollywood. Got signed at UTA, started selling scripts. It was great. And at this point, I've written 40 screenplays. I'm in the Writers Guild. But even when you get to the professional level, there's still ebbs and flows. And in between, I'm always writing something, but when I wasn't actively on an assignment, I picked up this job teaching at UCLA Extension, which was fascinating because it was like, oh, how am I doing what I'm doing in a way to convey it to other people so it would be helpful for them? I did that for like one class per semester for about 5 years. And then I was like, this is fine, it's fun, but like there's a whole other level. Meanwhile, I had 20 years of personal growth experience in like men's groups and things where I would take people on very deep personal journeys inside their psyche to deal with this issue or that issue, the other one, and did a lot of that spelunking into my own soul as well. Partly for my screenwriting, but partly just because I'm a geek around personal growth and spirituality type stuff. So I was like, oh, I've basically been training to be a life coach
Hmm.
for 20 years. What happens if I do what if I take what I do as a working screenwriter and teacher of the craft and combine it with what I love doing as a personal growth dude, and then I became a life coach for screenwriters, and that's been really amazing. So in the 4 years since my program started, there's been 30 people that have gone through the premium program and gotten people representation, gotten paid work, gotten them all sorts of anything you want to measure in terms of success. There's even one of my clients, like a couple weeks ago, won 5 Canadian Screen Winners, like including
Wow.
best screenplay. So literally, and that's just like we're just starting. Like my program, because I'm very selective, it's gonna be just crushing it on those other levels. So anyway, and then in addition to that, I also do other surgical strikes. Like sometimes I'll work with professionals who just need to kind of go from good to great in some aspect of the craft, or a lot of people, if once they get to the professional level, they don't know really how to get their script into the right hands.
Hmm.
So I can help them with that. So, but I've always been fascinated by every facet of the game. And so, and being at NYU, watching super talented people crush it and other people who had the same talent struggle, and then having that personal growth background, it's like, well, what's going on? How can I help? So I love it. So I've always helped people like casually, but now I'm like, you know, I go deep. I go soul deep, and I help people like for their because that's where that's where the real blocks are. It's like it's always us blocking ourselves, and it's because there's something unsafe about success or just vague about what we need to do next or whatever. And you have the answers inside you, Paul, and everybody else does. And it's really difficult to get at your own answers just by watching YouTube videos or doing a do-it-yourself course or even a great community. But when you have a really good coach, even like a mentor, like mentors are nice, but what mentors in general will do is go like, hey, when I did this deal or whatever, it's fun, it's great. But like a coaching relationship really walks into your psyche soul deep, and or at least it's the way I do it. And
Mhm.
then we resolve any sort of, you know, um, snag or bump that's going on that's stopping you from your next level of success. And then that's how I've seen people get the best results possible. Last thing I'll say about like how do I know they're getting results? There were two people in my program who got toward the end of it's generally a 5 month one-to-one coaching process, weekly meetings, and we go deep. And then there's group calls and community for life. Like I'm all in on them. And so we were, I don't know, 5 months into these to these two writers, and it happened at the same time. Like they sent out a script for notes in Hollywood. People not affiliated with me, but they happened to get notes like within a couple of days of each other. And it was really fascinating because they both got the same kind of note, which was this script is effing amazing. Like this is, and they were like, this looks like you've, I don't know, written maybe 5 or 6 screenplays at this point. Like that's how good it was. It was the first screenplay each one of them had written.
Wow.
So, and you know how long it takes to write 5 screenplays or
Yeah.
6, right? So,
Yeah.
if you're cooking, you might do that in 5 or 6 years. So, I took them in 5 months what somebody that's cooking would do in 5 years. It's a 10x difference. And that's because coaching goes that deep and it gives you the exact insight you need when you need it. It's totally custom. It's like an MFA program, totally customized to you and your style and where you are in the road. It's
Oh
pretty
man,
awesome.
that is fascinating because yeah, because like your first script, that's like the one you don't ever want to talk about or you never want to show because you know how bad it is. Because you didn't know what you didn't know about writing and you just kind of had to stumble your way through it and eventually yeah, as you go along with each script after that, you get better and better. But to be at a I've written 5 scripts level with your first one, that is phenomenal.
Yeah. And to be fair, it wasn't like these two people were 15 years old and rolled off the couch and said, I want to write a screenplay, right? One was a deacon of the church. So he had experience telling stories to his congregation,
Hmm.
for a while and loved movies his whole life. And so it was his first screenplay. He had done different types of storytelling, you know what I mean? But I was like, okay, I can transfer those skills. Like I love working with people who already have significant skills and then transferring. There's a woman who's an acclaimed documentarian, had a film at like Telluride, but she was a producer for docs, but hadn't really had her own voice as a screenwriter. So I can work with her. Copywriters, easy to work with. Journalists, nonfiction. Another woman who had a book published at Hay House, like a spiritual book. I showed her how to take that talent and write screenplays. The other one in that example, she was like a creativity coach in general, and she'd written some stuff. So it's like I can't take somebody from zero to that far, but if you have talent and transferable skills, especially anybody like in journalism, copywriting, anything like that, if you've been a professional writer in some other sense, and I have a good vibe for you, I can probably get you really fast, really quickly.
That is fantastic. So, okay, one of the things we talked about when we were setting this all up is that you wanted to help me, kind of with my journey. And as we said, we've known each other for quite a while, and I've got a couple of scripts under my belt. They've had some moderate contest success.
Mhm.
Right now, for me, in all honesty, it's about uh, potentially finding representation, which I know is not necessary. It helps,
Yeah,
but it's not necessary.
yeah.
I think it really comes down to industry access because I've heard so many different applications that you can try. Go on to IMDb Pro, find producers who've made stuff that's similar to yours, and contact them, see if they're interested.
Mhm.
You can try the query letter route, which I've done so many times, and I think that's got diminishing returns as time goes on because it's getting harder and harder for writers to access because there's always no unsolicited material or by referral only, and you can't get in if you don't know anybody. So I've kind of dialed back my attempts just because right now I'm trying to focus on making the writing stronger, and the connections that I do have, I make sure to hold on to them when I know they'll do the most good. So if someone says, "Oh, you can contact this manager and tell them I referred him," I want to make sure the script is as rock solid as possible before I just say, "Oh, I got to send him an email right now," or it's or it's going to be too late.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is good. So let's dig into this. I'm going to be able to get you a significant step forward. I know. Let's get first of all a little more precise on where you work. Because obviously we know each other a little bit. And I saw you post on Facebook fairly recently some sort of, it was like an option deal or something, right? Is that, had you optioned something yet, or a couple options?
Well, I did option a script, but that was quite a while ago, and that option has since expired.
Mhm.
And the person who optioned it, I don't think they were interested in renewing it because I haven't heard from them. So it's kind of just put that in the past.
Good.
Uh,
Well,
the
now you have the rights back as we sell it again. I like it. Okay.
exactly.
So you've optioned one thing, got it. You said some, here's a good measure for you and for anybody listening to this. In the last 10 contests that you've entered, any script, any contest, how many times did you get at least to the quarterfinals?
I will start this up saying I kind of have since dialed back my contest entries,
Good.
but I would say for the last 10 quarterfinalists in at least 4 to 5.
Okay.
Uh, that was it for those contests. And for one contest, I actually came in third in the category.
Good. Okay, good. So that to me suggests you do have a bit more opportunity with craft. So you want so by that measure, and I'll tell you why I use that measure because it's really nice and it's objective and it's a pretty clean one. When you're really rocking at that professional level, it'll be more like 6 or 7 out of 10. You're
Okay,
close. So 4 or 5 is solid. Like you're definitely there. And it doesn't surprise me that at that level you've gotten an option before. Like you're kind of knocking at the door craft wise.
sure.
There's probably some producers that will pay you. There's the one that you worked with. There's probably others that are like that. You might want to spend some time like so basically the two main things, it's right at the professional level now. Sometimes you can be there and then atrophy, right? So right in the professional level now or on your next one, and then get into the right hands. Those are the two main obstacles.
Hmm.
So yes, you're absolutely at a place where building relationships is going to pay dividends for you. So you definitely want that to be part of it. And look, that's actually the bigger part of it. Like even at the level that you're working at right now, if you were crushing your sales and marketing game, you'd be making significant money. So like, so I would say in general, maybe, I don't know, 50% of your energy and time writing, getting from good to great in terms of, we could talk about specifics about that. And then another 50%, getting the script into the right hands. So for this session, this kind of mini fun session for the next whatever 20 minutes or so, do you want to lean more on the craft side, getting from good to great, or would you rather lean on like finding your out? So one is also, you can think about your writing voice, and the other is your outreach voice. Um, and the key is you want to be really authentic about either one.
Hmm.
And there's a professional level that you can do that, and literally it's still synchronistic when things actually happen. But when you are fully cranking on your writing voice at a professional level and your outreach voice on a professional level, then the odds actually tilt in your favor. It's weird if you don't start making money and opportunities if you're doing it at the professional level. 99% of people are not doing it at that level, and that's within their control. And so they need to do that if they want to start getting there. You can't complain about Hollywood and blah, blah, blah.
Right,
So
right.
which one feels more exciting to you?
Well, see, that's the challenge is because honestly, both of them are exciting. I will preface this by saying that with the script I'm working on now, that I just got notes back from a friend of mine. He's done really well in some contests. He hasn't been able to really have as much success industry wise, but he's really good at the craft.
Good.
And he's I've known him for a good number of years. And one of the things he's always pushed me on, he says he'll read a draft, say, "This is good, but I know you can do better."
Mhm.
So he's kind of like, been a coach in that regard. He's kind of
Good.
like, just kind of like, say, okay, you can do it. You can just, crank it up a little more. You can do that.
Good.
And so when I sent him this most recent draft, he said, this is exactly what I've been hoping you would finally be able to do. And so
Beautiful.
that was just like, that was like the gold star from the teacher because, I was trying to write to impress the industry, but to be able to have that effect on this person, that was just fantastic. And he said, I still have a couple of notes that, that you might take into consideration, but that, he said, when I met you, like your writing was here and I wanted you to get like up to here. And he said, you're like just shy of that right now. And he said, and he was so proud of me, and that was great. So in that terms, and regarding the script and the contest, this was all previous drafts. So I think that my writing now is stronger than even say a year ago.
Great.
So which
Great.
was fantastic for me. That's why I'm like the next couple of weeks for me is all about this fine tuning the script, because there is a contest deadline I
Okay,
want to
good.
meet.
So with that extra data, then I would say I would shift it more towards even more towards your outreach voice and say,
Sure.
whatever 20. Like here's the thing for anybody else, especially any professionals listening. Write when you must. You're up in the middle of the night. You've got this idea, like I can't sleep. I gotta like write. Like when that do that, right? Otherwise, once you have 2 or 3 completely realized professional scripts, like don't write a fourth, don't write a fifth. If you must, do it, but like if you want to be professional, if you then focus on the outreach voice part, because
Mm-hmm.
what you're actually doing is over supplying yourself.
Right.
And you're actually you're pushing, you're slowing down your career. If you have 3 scripts that you could sell that are fully developed and you've got verification from outside people, dude, this is amazing, and they're introducing you to people they know, so like that's verification. If you've you know calibrated that for word of mouth, that's how you know when something's done. Like people are going, I'm going to hand this to a trusted colleague because you're great. Like that's the bar that you're looking for. When you're hitting that and you have 3 pieces of material, your job is not to write a fourth. That slows you the F down,
Okay.
right? Because think about it. If you're doing outreach on 3 scripts and maybe they're adjacent, hopefully they're adjacent to the same genre because it's going to be more focused, but whatever, you just all of a sudden, if you have a fourth one or a fifth one, let's take it to extreme. Let's say you have 10 to sell. You're just diluting
Mm-hmm.
the attention. So 3, and then your full bore writing outreach voice development, building relationships. We can talk about your preferred way to do that. And then if you're so inspired you can't sleep at night, then yes, of course, and start writing your fourth. Like
Sure.
or if you're messing around with something, like there's plenty of things to do mess around, but there's things you can do that I'll suggest on the outreach voice side that's actually deeply creative and will probably get that itch scratched. So let's talk about that side for you.
Yeah.
There's generally um, the number one thing I'll say, you're gonna get this intellectually, maybe, or maybe not. And if we don't, then we'll have that conversation first. But you'll probably get this intellectually, but putting it into practice is mother effing the challenge. So what I'm gonna say, and I could even tell by the language you used about co-querying and then looking them up and whatever, and then like, having this person you said, and then I want to, you should, I want to use that person, and you didn't mean to use it, but like there's an energy in transactional nature, and that's the problem. Like this is a social business, dude. It's a social business, and so I want you and everybody else listening to this, the way you develop your outreach voice is exactly the way that you met your best friend in high school. It's exactly the way you met your best romantic partners. You basically find legit human to human common ground. So you're not going to IMDb and finding a producer and then trying to sell them something, because that's too forced. That's transactional.
Okay.
And when you do that, they go, we don't accept unsolicited material. And they should, right? Because you're not, your sales game is amateur. This is professional sales.
Mm-hmm.
Professional sales doesn't feel like selling. It feels like hanging out with your friends in high school, right? So let's talk about Rick Rubin. He's the producer, the music producer that produced all sorts of bands. He wrote a really beautiful book called The Creative Act. That's for anybody. He's like a guru type guy, but for musicians, he's amazing. But when you think about when he was coming up, he was like a Jewish guy from Long Island that went to NYU and actually started Def Jam Records out of his dorm at NYU. But he would hang out in the record stores. In fact, this is when he was there, I think late 80s or early 90s. I mean, I was at NYU in the early 90s. I think it was a few years, maybe 5 years before or 10 years. I don't know. He just would hang out with people in these record stores and he would talk music. And they would go, and he would, and it would be hip hop. It would be this or that. This guy like produced like Run DMC and also, I mean, like this, when you see some of the bands he's worked with, you're like, how did that white dude like get with like the Beastie Boys, and maybe that was a little more, but like he did it because he hung out and talked passionately about music, and they go, this dude Rick is cool because he could speak to what he loved about music, and even now he's like, I can't play any instruments, but I know what I love as in terms of music, and I can work with any musician and say, more of this, less of that. He produces sort of, some of the most popular music of all time. He's one of the most, and so the point that I'm getting at is that he didn't network. He wasn't like, I got to go meet this band. They were just get the F out of here. He hung out. He hung out. So let's put this into action. If you feel comfortable sharing, how did you meet one of your close friends in high school?
A lot of it was that we just had similar classes, and a lot of times it was just we, like you said, common ground. Like we just had something
So
that.
let's get specific. So think
Sure.
of one particular friend, one particular class, something he said or something you said that made him laugh. Like let's get laser specific here.
I honestly I can't remember anything specific because it was that long ago,
Uh-huh.
but probably just we like I probably made a joke that referenced I'm in this the person I'm thinking of was probably referenced Monty Python. And he said, "Oh," and then he would like do the line following the thing that I said. And then that was like that, "Oh, hey, we both like Python." And we would like that led to other
Okay,
things that we
freeze,
found in common.
freeze, dude. 100%. That's it. That's your outreach voice. Were you networking? No.
No.
Was he a stepping stone so you could actually go meet some girl or something? No, it's gross. Was, were you talking to him only so you could get to his boss so you get, no, no, that's the whole point. And that's why cold queries don't work. Because that's like going, hey, I've got a penis, you've got a vagina, you want to go upstairs? Like, no, no, that's not what we're doing here. Right.
Okay.
So and you already know how to do this. Like this is what coaching is. Like you know how to do this. So when you meet a producer, go talk about Monty Python, right? That's exactly what you do. So yes, you go to IMDb Pro, you look at people that were involved that you think were involved, you don't know for sure,
Sure.
but you think, okay, you got a credit on this. That seems likely to be accurate. And then so you're not randomly talking to people and hanging out with them on the internet, right? That's not efficient enough. You do calibrate your conversations for the people that seem most likely to be kindred spirits because they've produced similar movies, they've produced similar TV shows, they're writing on the TV show. There's ways to calibrate it, and then hanging out, socializing takes over. In the
Hmm.
same way, you're not going to hit up your friend for anything other than, dude, I got this funny joke, or you know what I mean? Hey,
Right.
text, blah blah blah. Like one of my buddies from NYU, we're still texting each other a couple times a week, making jokes about people on the NYU soccer team that we were both. And it's like, oh, blah, blah, and like that, like so. That's what you do in Hollywood, and when you do that, Hollywood's doors are wide open to you. They're not closed off. If you go to dude, Monty Python is beloved. Like you literally can use this. And if you were to Google the name of a producer and then Monty Python, and then who knows, maybe that person referenced Monty Python when they're on some panel discussion or article, and you're like, oh crap, this guy's actually a real Monty Python fan. And now you go to that person's social media. This is just an example, right? But
Sure.
these are the synchronistic things that happen. And then you go, oh, by the way, I heard you said this thing about my podcast. That was funny, whatever. Now you're talking about the nexus, just like high school. You're talking about something that you have. And obviously, it doesn't only have to be my Python. You have dozens and dozens of things you're interested in. These other human beings have dozens and dozens of things they're interested in. You just sleuth around to see what is their common ground. And then you speak to that for the intrinsic joy of speaking to it. You're not trying to get something from that. Now you become the guy that, let's say, made a funny Mighty Python joke, and he's like, whatever. And now 2 weeks later, you look at his Twitter feed or X feed or LinkedIn, whatever, and they say something about the industry. and you
Hmm.
go, oh, hey, by the way, that's funny because I thought blah, 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 blah.
Hmm.
Again, genuine. You're not like, hey, will you read my script? We don't accept unsolicited material. You are having a human social interaction with this dude. And here's what happens very quickly, probably even with the first Monty Python thing, the first thing they do is they check your social media profile. And most people, 90%, I think yours is pretty good. You've been hanging around with me for a long time. Yours, I think, is pretty good. Um, but most people are they click over the profile and it's not screaming their superpower.
Mm.
But when you have it, so like it's amazing to me that like everybody that's listening to this that's written a screenplay, and I want them to let this sink in. 1,000 more people will see your social media profile than will read your screenplay.
Mm.
1,000 to 1, probably. And the amount of time and energy and everything you put into scene one of your screenplay, when that's only going to be seen 1,000, way less than who's going to. So, pour the same love and care and joy and awesomeness of you into your social media profile, because that is the gateway to the other awesomeness of you.
Mm.
And so, when you optimize your social media profile first with the same love that you write every scene of your screenplay, and it's an opportunity to entertain, then however you get their attention, they go over and they go, oh, A, I like this guy Paul because he made a joke about Monty Python. Let me see who he. Oh, B, and now I really like Paul because his profile is really funny in the same way Monty Python is, or whatever. I'm really liking this guy. And then right away, because you've delivered value, you've added attention to what this person's interest is in life, there's a human desire to reciprocate.
Mm.
And now they're going to go, "What's you're really interesting. What's going on, Paul?" Oh, now that you asked, yeah, I just wrote a script that's actually, that to me has some of the flavor of Monty Python. That's it. Oh, really? That's interesting because you've already established you like that. Like, what is it? What
Hmm.
is it about? Oh, well, now that you asked, here's the log line, and it's a cross between Monty Python meets such and such. You see how organic they are initiating. They are so, and then they solicit your script. That sounds amazing. Let me read it. Okay, great. Guess what happened? No agent, no manager, no cold queries, no bullshit, right? You showed up as a human being, you found real common ground, and
Hmm.
you did it patiently, and you're not trying to get something from this dude. You're building a long-term relationship. Why do you care if you guys do a script deal this week, next month, or in 10 years? You're in it for the whole thing. So these are people in your neighborhood. Just hang out with them. So it's simple, right? But like when you say networking, it's transactional, it's whatever. It's like you're missing everything. You don't network with your friends in high school or college or whatever.
Right.
Um, okay. That,
No,
that
because
what do you take away?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that one.
What are your takeaways from that
I
rant?
think yeah, it's honestly, it's kind of what I try to do now is that because I'll see like, say like a manager has a Twitter account and I'll follow them. And I'm not going to bombard them like with, hey, will you read my script? I'll just see like what they're talking about.
Yeah,
And if it's about the business, I think I'm actually less likely to respond. But if they say like, "Oh yeah, here's kids, here's I was soccer dad this weekend, and I've been a soccer dad, so
yeah.
so I'll like that, and I'll say I've been there, that kind of thing." And
Hold on.
sometimes
Okay,
and sometimes they might follow me, and if they follow me, I'll say, "Yeah, thanks for the follow. Hope all your projects are coming along nicely." And just as a kind of a case in point, a couple of years ago. Uh, I don't know how it happened, but a director who's made some films that I know just started following me. I never reached out to them or anything, and I
yeah.
said, "Oh," and I looked to make sure who it was, and I'd actually seen some of their films, and I said like, and one of them was a horror movie, and I wrote back and said, "Oh, thanks for the follow. Hope all your projects are coming along." And I just so you know, like that one scene in that movie where the character gets their tendon cut, it still gives me chills.
Beautiful.
And that was it. And so they said, "Oh, thanks. I really appreciate that. We worked really hard on that scene." And that was it. And so like, and occasionally I would tweet or like maybe a mention to them or something like that. But I don't try to take advantage of the relationship. Because
Beautiful.
like you're saying, I try to let things develop organically, and
So
hopefully they'll become interested in wanting to interact with me more.
awesome. Okay, so here's I'll take you through a progression to make it even more effective for you. So this is awesome. So you already got that concept. You've been applying it. So here's different engagement strategies. So one is somebody can post something and you like it. Like that's it's better than doing nothing, but it's going to mean nothing in terms of what hits their radar. The next thing is saying something like, "Oh, soccer dad, yeah, I've been there. Like that was good, right?" And it's louder or more impactful than a like or an engagement, but it's still not. It's too general and vague for them to really,
Sure.
unless they already know you or familiar or something. They're just almost certainly not gonna. It's not gonna be
Hmm.
much. The next level, spectacular. Hey, such and such. I love this specific thing about this thing. It still gives me chills. It's beautiful because that's why they got into the business. They got into the business to make that emotional impact. And when you give them the gift of saying, hey, you made this impact on me and I really appreciate you. Phenomenal, right? And so, no surprise, you got the response. You've built this relationship with this human being. Now, the next level is catnip question.
Hmm.
So, it is not, can you read my script? It is not whatever. It is, what do you've done a few horror films. What is it in your mind that um, that separates a good horror film from a great horror film? Good question, right?
Yeah.
What is your number? That's cool that you made this horror movie. What do you consider the number one scariest villain of all time?
Oh, villain. Okay.
Right? Or monster, right?
No, no, I know. I mean,
Whatever.
it's
Like
that's different from what's the scariest movie you would think? The scariest villain. I mean, to me, those are two different things.
it is. I meant to say monster, but
That's okay.
the point that I'm getting at is the catnip question is you getting to be your favorite interviewer. Jimmy
Mm,
Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, David Letterman, Oprah, Joe Rogan, whatever podcast, whatever interviewers you love, and you love the questions that they do. You get good at asking questions. Questions are absolute gold because you get to control the conversation, and the other person loves you for it.
mm,
That is money. So that comes from Dale Carnegie 100 years ago, How to Win Friends and Influence People, right?
sure.
You you go in, you get to choose the question. And by the way, it's not random juicy question. It's calibrated, not slimy like whatever. It's just mindfully calibrated towards the values and things in your screenplay that you're fascinated with. And why are you not talking about those things? That's why, again, that once you've got 3 professionally written scripts, get into the effing business and get into these conversations around the subjects of your screenplay instead of writing a fourth, which is really you spending time with the values and things that you like.
Hmm.
Spend the time with the values and things that you like in the minds of the producers you want to work with, not on the page anymore. You've done that enough. Do it in the minds of the people. And that's how you build relationships. And if you do this on the regular, my goodness, if you spent an hour, let's say you spent 5 hours last week writing or 10 hours, if you spent that time building relationships in this way, socializing in this way, dude, I promise you, you're going to get 2 options in 6 months.
Hmm.
I
Wow.
mean,
That.
it's again, now the odds go into your favor because they're gonna look, there's 100,000 screenplays written every year, but none of them are even considered, really. Very few of them are considered, right?
Right.
Because it's just the filtering system. There's too many. So they in fact, there's so many, they just go, we're not going to see any of them. We can't. We no unsolicited screenplays. So what do they actually do? This is partly where the seed of nepotism comes in. They just go to, like, it's not, first of all, nepotism is not real. It's a totally phony, overblown thing. But the seed of it is, of course, the producer is going to go to their social network first. We all go to our social network first. Hey, what did you think of this movie? You just got, so like, if I'm a producer and I just optioned a book, the first thing I'm going to do is the screenwriters already know.
Mm,
Or the screenwriter who's really interesting, who made me laugh about Monty Python today on Twitter. Why would I? And this guy writes that exact genre. Why would I not have a conversation with you about that?
mm.
So you got to cultivate the proximity. if this was 500 years ago and you were the town cobbler and you're in the stable doing cobbles all day or whatever you do, shoot, you got to get into the town square. You go in the town square and you go, dude, Mr. Baker, your boots are all effed up, bro. I probably didn't say bro back then, but like, I can fix your boots. Hey, tell you what, right now, I'm going to do a 5-minute fix job on your boot. And if it helps, great. Then if you need more, then come back to I live right down by the river. Right. So like, but you got to get into the mix.
Mhm.
And that's the only thing screenwriting, and you get to do it now for free on social media. Get into the town square, help people with their problems. The baker had shoes that were jacked. You could help him. A producer has things he and she are fascinated by. You can help them spend time and energy in the things they're fascinated by, just like you in high school got that joke around, Monty Python. You just find out what their values are, and you know what your values are. And for the love of Pete, don't bother them if you don't have any shared values. You're not
Mhm.
faking it. It's not schmoozing. It's only talking to these people when you genuinely have something to talk about, whether they ever do business with you or not. It's being a human being and being a social person. That makes sense?
Oh yeah, that makes total sense because what you were saying about asking the catnip questions, because I've been doing this podcast for a while, that I always try to write questions that are really specifically tailored to the guest. It's not like, tell me about yourself. That's a starter. It's almost like an icebreaker. But then I
Yeah,
get into like I've talked to authors and I've talked to screenwriters and I've talked to, cartoonists. And I always ask them like about them that questions that only they could answer. And what's great is that they are excited to answer the question
yeah,
because people to a certain extent writers don't like talking about themselves, but they like talking about the stuff that they work on
yeah,
because it's kind of
yeah,
like that introvert aspect takes over. But you say, like, tell me about yourself. Oh well, I just kind of like hang out, play video game. Well, tell me about the and like this happened at Austin. Like I'd see someone, I was, John Smith, and there's the script. It was the second round. I say, hey, John, tell me about Death in the Afternoon, and then they just kind of like not go into sales mode, but you could kind of see like the spark light within them, and they'd be
yeah.
really excited to talk about their script. And I just love to see that.
That's right. That's exactly right. You're giving value to them when they light up. It's beautiful. The last thing I'll say for you, and then we'll wrap up for today,
Sure.
specifically for you, because you've done all this interviewing, you could ask any effing producer ever. Say, hey, by the way, I do this podcast. I've been interviewing. What's the best question you've ever been asked by an interviewer?
Hmm.
That good one, right? Because that's genuine for you. Like you want to hear. I'm
Yeah.
interested in that question. You're interested in that, and every I guarantee half the producers are going, that's an interesting question. Nobody asked me that. That's interesting. And they'll start thinking about it. And you might get them going like, whatever, I don't know. And then okay, they're not ready for it. But like
Right. Right.
that's a good question for you because you can back it up. And then also, by the way, you're not just screenwriter trying to get something from them. You actually have this whole other background that you've cleverly put into the radar and into the mix without so you've separated yourself organically. And that's what when you're really good at your outreach voice, all that stuff comes really naturally.
Yeah, at that because that's the thing is that I always try to ask a question that because a lot of times they have questions they are expecting, but I love to ask the questions that they're not expecting
That's right.
because many is the time during these podcasts that I'll ask a question and a lot of times I'll get the response. That's a really good question because it's something
Yeah.
like maybe they haven't been asked before. And I know you have to go soon, but we'll wrap this up. And the last thing I'll say is that when I was in Austin, I took part in this roundtable with a manager, and everyone was asking about like their scripts and and my thing was like, okay, everyone thinks that when you get a manager, you're all set, you don't have to do any more work. What can you sign a writer, what can they do to make your job easier? And the manager was just like, that is a really good question. I don't think he'd ever been asked that before because it's always about the writers, about themselves. And I'm like, I want to know about the manager because I want to know more about that part of the business. And so he had this great answer. I mean, he couldn't read my script because it wasn't what the genre that he works in, and which was fine. But I'm just glad that I made that kind of impression. And he did because I sent the follow-up email, and he did remember me. So, you know, so I got that one done.
Yeah, it's great. You're doing great, Paul. I really like this. And I think if you just keep leaning into it and keep finding that fun, like the game isn't to get something from them. It's like, ooh, what can I communicate so this person lights up? For the intrinsic joy of helping a fellow human being light up.
Hmm.
And then that sets you apart from literally 1 in 50 people who do something like that. And
Yeah,
that's
because
why, yeah,
I think to me, it's about the connection. I mean, yeah, the business aspect is great, but it's really about I know you're a manager, but I know you have a life too. And so I want to know more about the life, and if you want to work with me, great. If not, hey, you're still a cool person.
beautiful. I love it. Well done, Paul.
All right. Okay. So Brooks, we're going to wrap things up because I know you have to go. So how can people get in touch with you so they can have this also kind of enlightening one-on-one coaching session?
The best way to do it is, let me see, just checking one thing. Um, BrooksElmsCoaching.com. So
Brooks Elms.
BrooksElms.com. BrooksElmsCoaching.com is where you can definitely, there's a quick little video about me, but they've seen context enough here. And then you can sign up for my wait list. And then on my wait list, you can get, uh, it takes as long as it takes depending on my schedule. And then we do a free one-on-one call, and I get a sense of where you're going and then how I can help you. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I think you might be right for one of my programs. Sometimes I have a
Hmm.
friend's program. Sometimes I just give you free stuff, or sometimes like whatever. I'm here to help wherever you're going. So if that sounds like it could be helpful for you, jump in. Love to talk
All
to you.
right. BrooksElmsCoaching.com. Brooks, this has been fantastic stuff, both for the listening and viewing audience, but for me personally as well. I'm not going to lie about that. Thank you so much for being here today. Everybody, feel free to like and subscribe because we can always use the publicity. If you want to check out my screenwriting blog, it is MaximumZ.blog. I'm on Twitter at Maximum_Z. I'm also on Instagram at Pez Screenwriting, PEZ. Yes, those are my initials. This is Brooks. I'm Paul. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, go write something.